Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of the Out of Interest podcast. Today I am joined by Brad. He is the host of a podcast called Blond.Radio. On each episode, he talks to three strangers about their hobbies, passions, experiences. Episodes are often quite therapeutic, in my opinion, and people can apply to be on his podcast through Instagram or TikTok DMs. His TikTok account is his fastest growing account and his most popular one. It has allowed him to grow and reach people to interview for his podcast. His TikTok has gained over 1 million likes and has currently over 90,000 followers. Brad, first of all, congratulations on everything you've done with Blond Radio so far.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes.
Yeah, it's great. One of my favorite things about the podcast is the focus of the show. It's just on random strangers, and the focus of this show, this podcast, is individuals that use social media in a unique way, and I think that you're the textbook example of that, so to speak. Blond Radio is, I've already said it's therapeutic, but it's deeply personal as well, for these people just to come on and talk about their experiences. And well, I just wanted to ask you, where did the idea for this come from?
Yeah. So, and thank you. That's very validating to hear that, the work I'm making is hitting in the way that is kind of intended to a certain degree. Gosh, it all started because I lost my job. I was kind of in the first wave of COVID-related layoffs early in March. And to fill the time in between, looking for jobs on job boards, I started making these sort of vibey videos, which I had a TikTok account previously, but then I was really trying to get into the trends and stuff and just kind of be sensational. And it wasn't really landing for me. So with this new account, I thought I wanted to put forward, what do I really care about? So I was doing really cool visuals, and they were getting a little bit, the tiniest amount of traction. And I thought, this needs voices. This needs a narrative. So I thought to myself, I could probably, call my friends, record the audio, and then put snippets of that over. They'd probably be cool with that. And those videos, those initial videos, people talking, chatting about their life, got a ton of attention. And from there, I put a simple phrase in both my social bios, DM to book an interview. I didn't think anyone would message, but there hasn't been a day since that I haven't received messages. It's overwhelming. It's crazy busy, but I'm so blessed to have this platform. And yeah, from there, it's just become this this huge project where I really feel, even though it is technically my show, it's such a community project. I feel like I'm just bringing stories to the forefront for listeners' ears. There is parts of my personality and my tastes in the show and in the branding, but I feel like it is mostly focused outwards, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, so the TikTok account, it kind of blew up. How many DMs do you get a day?
It does depend. TikTok, the algorithm is all over the place, as you know. So there's highs and lows. I'd say it peaks at maybe 40 messages a day. And the average these days is maybe around 10 messages a day.
So when it comes to picking people and recording episodes, is that a daily thing for you?
Yeah. I'll usually check every day. I don't usually book every day. When I initially started out, I was booking interviews every single day, sometimes multiple a day. And I quickly realized that was not sustainable. So now I'm taking a more leveled approach to it. And now that I do have some data on my demographic, I can sort of suss out what voices might land better for my audience, or what voices may need to be brought to the spotlight regarding to my audience. So yeah, it's a daily process.
I think I don't want to overuse the words impressive when talking about your podcast, but it's 14 weeks old. like we have to keep that in mind. It's 3.5 months old, and you know, it's grown really quickly, and I think it's the upload schedule and stuff that really well, that I think that helps you. The TikTok is prolific. The podcast episodes, they come out on a weekly basis, pretty much. I think you're on episode 15 or 16 right now, right?
Working on 16, yeah.
You're working on 16. So it's almost weekly. How do you keep yourself motivated? How do you avoid burnout? Because it sounds like a lot.
It is. I put like over 40, sometimes 50 hours a week into this, and it's not profitable, but right now, but hopefully one day it will be. But it's sort of like I wouldn't be wanting to do anything else. This is kind of the culmination of like all my years of making videos and being really introspective and then turning that into outrospective. There are weeks where it is a grind, where sometimes you know, because I don't have a job at the moment, that has freed up a lot of time, but there are weeks where life can get has to get scheduled in a way to make this all work out, and unexpected things are always going to come up. But the motivation is something I've been, I wouldn't say struggling with recently, but sort of trying to manage better. It's and I will blend again. I think the summer heat has something to do with it. Yeah. But yeah, it's just the latest I've been to an upload was maybe by like half an hour, and that like devastated me. I'm sure no one noticed, but yeah, what you're speaking to, consistency is so key, especially when you're starting out a new project, to stay on top of it and create that expectation for your audience. So that's something that's kept me motivated. We in the past month we started a Discord server, which has been a lot of fun. Been active in there when I can. And those guys, they don't know it, but they really do keep me accountable, because, you know, on days where I feel like I don't want to edit this interview, I think about all these people that you know, wait for this weekly upload and really anticipate hearing these voices. So it's pressure, but it's a good pressure to have. So
yeah, I mean, I think that pressure is the only thing that will get me to do anything. I think you know, the second you add a schedule and you say, all right, this is what I'm going to do this week, then, you know, you start to get the ball rolling and you start to get stuff done. You're talking about kind of how people expect these, not expect, but they like hearing these voices on a weekly basis. That's what keeps you motivated. But what was the initial motivation? What was the initial kind of spark of inspiration?
Yeah, that's interesting, because this is not a very traditional podcast start. It wasn't supposed to be a podcast. It was just the TikTok videos for a while. But the most repeated comment I got was, where's this from? Is this a full podcast? I'd love to hear the full thing. And I was like, shoot, I guess I have to make a podcast now. But it's really turned into my favorite part of the project. But it's always just been, I've just always been addicted to stories and narratives. I grew up addicted to books, and later in life discovered film. And I had a really impactful performing arts teacher through high school who always instilled in me the value of why not. So, you know, the opportunity was there. So we're just going to run with it for as long as it pans out. And as much as like stress and pressure may be associated with it, the net positive right now, how much positivity and understanding and empathy it can bring to so many people is worth it. So yeah.
So yeah, I think that's quite important. The top, or the first thing that comes up on your TikTok bio is your daily dose of empathy. That's what it's about. That's the focus of the show. So for each episode to become what it is, for it to actually become an episode and not just a string of like loosely related conversations, you have to research guests. And for me, that's easy because a lot of the guests that I interview, they have established social media accounts. You know, they don't have to be huge, but you know, you've got 90,000 followers, so it doesn't take that much to research you. You're
Sure.
well known. For these people that you research that have like a couple hundred, does that pose a challenge? Like, how do you go about researching?
Yeah, so that is definitely part of the process of it feels so weird to use the word choose, like choose who's going to be on the show, but like that is what it is. It's kind of sussing out the people that come to me, because someone may shoot me a really impassioned message with like a really great story, and I go to, you know, investigate through their socials and stuff, and they have like one post and their private account, and there's not a lot of room for me to work there. Not to say like their story is any less valuable, but I want it to be a really engaging conversation. And if I don't have at least a little peek into their life, I feel like it could tend to be pretty one-sided. I mean, they are like intentionally one-sided, more so conversations. I want them to have the spotlight, but I want to engage with them and have this back and forth in the spotlight. So yeah, I really tend to lean towards people who are a bit more active on social media. That's not to say they have to have, as you're saying, tons and tons of followers, but people that are on these apps daily and sort of are in this headspace, grew up with these apps. That's the kind of people we're trying to engage with, because, you know, we're trying to be as universal as possible. So yeah, sometimes I get messages that are like, hey, I'm not super interesting, but I'd love to chat, which I kind of get the mentality of sending a message like that. But to be on the receiving end of like trying to create a product for as many people as possible, that that doesn't really sell. So like, if anyone's listening, sell yourself, like
Yeah.
put your best features forward, you know, be proud of your accomplishments. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend if anyone was to reach out, but that's kind of my process there.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of the guests that you have in your show, well, when you're interviewing them, they feel comfortable enough and they feel safe enough to kind of share their own personal outlook on life and on their experiences and on certain issues and, well, whatever the topic of discussion is. Have you ever had a guest that you've had on your show that's changed your outlook on something? Like, does it help broaden your mindset when you have these people on?
I'd say, and not to say that still doesn't happen, it still does happen on a weekly basis, but like really the first few weeks of interviews were probably the most impactful, because you're getting this validation of like, wow, people would actually be open to have a conversation as strangers. So there's two from those first few interviews that really stand out to me. One is Alex. She's from British Columbia, the same province I live in, but just a little farther away. And she is a musician. She's plays this weird instrument called the Q chord. It's very cool, and she's just a very passionate individual. And she said, you know, in relation to being on that grind, to being motivated, to staying on track, this quote, I think that she said her father told her, "If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room." And that really struck a chord with me. And from that point on, I did make changes in my life with, like, not the smartest people in the room, but if the people you're associating yourself with aren't, you know, bringing a positive energy to your life, if you're around people that are complaining a lot, they're negative, they're not future forward, it's going to rub off on you one way or another. So Alex really helped there. And then the other was Michael from New York. He gave up his whole life to, on a whim, move to New York and paint for a living, just on a risk. And he's making it work. And he said, if you work at something every single day, it's impossible to get worse at it, which is really struck a chord with me, because sometimes, you know, with the algorithm, with the views, with the numbers, a video that I pour hours into won't land. It won't get the views. It won't get the likes. And if I let that get me down, I wouldn't have got to where I am. So I accept the failures, and I think about Michael and I think I'm still working at it. I'm not getting worse at this. I just have to like retrospect, see where I can improve and move forward. But to stop working at it would be doing a disservice to myself. So yeah, those are probably the most two outstanding life changes I've had through talking to people on the show.
Yeah, and I think it is really important for you to keep working on Blonde Radio, not coming from a fan, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. It's just a nice thing to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome, but it's just a nice thing to listen to. And I think what can help is having that validation outside of social media, and you've come across that in the way of merchandise. You've recently launched your first drop, which is really exciting, you know, because again, I'll go back to it, 14 weeks, which is a really short amount of time to you know, have a brand that's big enough to have merchandise. So does this feel like more serious now that there's merchandise attached to it?
I feel in retrospect, I was a little ahead of myself to put out merch that early, but I had a target goal of like what I would expect and would assumed how many I would sell. And I was only 2 off from that goal. So, but then even to backtrack further, people I'm surrounding myself with, merch was helpful in the way of, how do I word this politely? I can't forget the people who said they would support me but didn't follow through. Like that's just impossible to wipe for. I wish I could just forget it. But yeah, the merch was like a big, just kind of a risk, and it kind of paid off. And since then, like I wouldn't say like every day, but pretty consistent messages asking about the next drop. So it does feel like, yeah, that first deposit of funds to my account after the campaign ended, it was like, this has traction and this can maybe one day be sustainable. So yeah, you're right. The validation was definitely there in the way of like, wow, people would actually go out of pocket to support this platform, which is just a blessing.
And I know that the focus of this episode was you know, primarily it's the podcast, but I wanted to turn away from Blonde Radio for a second and talk to you about movies, because they're quite a prominent feature for you. You've expressed an interest in them in dozens of ways, whether it's been on this episode already, on episodes on your show, you've talked about them, and on your YouTube channel, you've made around 30 short films as well as a series of what you call docs. And that was before you started Blonde Radio. So how did you get started with making short films?
Exactly, yeah. And those are only the ones on YouTube. There's like, I was uploading on Facebook for a while, my personal Instagram account, Vimeo. I just, yeah, this Blonde Radio project is the culmination of so much more. This passion for being behind a camera. I grew up in a pretty traditionally conservative Christian household where media wasn't kind of on the table. It wasn't really allowed in the way it was for a lot of my peers, as I discovered like in high school. So I feel now in retrospect, maybe I had and still have a lot of catching up to do when it comes to films. But the first film I saw in theaters where I was like, oh shoot, there's more than just like Disney movies, was this film called 50-50, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Seth Rogen. It's a comedy drama and just really hit for me of like, wow, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm feeling something, the music is doing something. And from that moment on, through the end of high school, I just really became impassioned with films and filmmaking. Started making little homemade videos with my friends, and it kind of took off from there. What probably bolstered it even more is I spent 8 months in Edmonton, Alberta, which is a very northern city in Canada. And I had no plans. I was doing nothing. I was making videos kind of, but I had a job at an independent movie theater, which to this day, it paid it paid almost nothing, but to this day, it's probably one of my favorite jobs. Just being surrounded by not necessarily my coworkers, but the people that would come in and would chat to me before the show and chat to me after the show and say, like, what was your opinion on the Phantom Thread or the Florida Project? And I'd give my perspective, and they say, oh, like I'm coming back. I'm going to talk to you about it. So that was pretty validating. Yeah, and I've just like on my phone here, my podcast rotation is like mostly film reviews, and I'm always watching YouTube film reviews. It's visual media. It's just the culmination of, visual arts, music, storytelling, narrative. It's so saturated, and I'm so glad to be living in a time where it's thriving. Maybe not 2020, but hopefully moving forward, we'll see a resurgence again. But yeah, it's just been super fundamental to me. So yeah, you're right. Blonde Radio, as much as, on TikTok, I think I have almost 100 videos now. Is that like all the comments get of like, how did you learn how to do this? It wasn't easy. It was years of like lots of failure and learning what didn't work. So yeah, that's probably the backlog on how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, I think a good outcome, or a possible outcome, of your podcast is when you're making all these connections with all these different people in all these different industries. It's kind of giving you a way to meet people that you're never gonna have met otherwise. And when you're talking about film, you've spoken to people that are pursuing film as a life, as a career. That they've grown up with film. They're continuing to grow up with film. Would you ever come back to these people? Or would you ever consider taking guests from Blonde Radio that are in film and collaborating with them, whether it's short film or indie or feature or whatever?
Totally. Yeah. My door's always been open, because it initially to reach out with someone is a collaboration in itself. It's a blessing to have these connections, but in a way I'm not trying to, it's weird. You don't want to, and this is like so anti the film business. I don't feel comfortable like using people to further my platform. The times that I reach out to potential guests, it's because, I feel like they would have a positive impact on my community, or my community would, receive their message well. It's tricky. It's something I'm clearly not comfortable with, as far as like, but yeah, I've been in talks with people who have always, like I just got off a call with Rowie, who collaborated with some of my most recent guests, Sam Eve, Ethan Frank, Scorpio Sierra. And so I do feel like I'm finding my community on TikTok, and I would, if TikTok survives the next coming months, I would love to put forward collaborations. I recently just posted kind of my first collaboration video, but not with fellow TikTokers. I mean, they all have TikTok, but with fellow listeners, all these people from around the world. I on my Instagram, I put out this prompt to send me a video, and I got a lot of videos back, and it's so cool, because that's kind of more the vein of voices we're trying to bring to the spotlight. Of course, I'm always going to have a spot for larger creators who want to chat, but I never want to lose, this small intimate space that we've created also.
Yeah, I think that's quite important. And I end up repeating myself, but with the podcast and the kind of comfortable therapy feel that it's got to it, I think having an intimate conversation with someone and keeping it small and kind of low key, I think it only serves to get the person's message across more. I think not the second, I have no idea, but I think what a lot of podcasts tend to do is they tend to strip away the sort of personal level of a conversation, and it's very structured, and it's very, you know, I've written down these questions, I will now read these questions, and you will answer these questions. And I've fallen into that trap, you know, trying to start a new podcast.
Right.
And then I come across Blonde Radio, and it makes me think, you know, this guy's doing it. I like what this guy's doing. How can I incorporate that into my podcast?
Now, don't get me wrong. I am also rattling off questions, but you're right. It's finding that balance of conversation and intimacy.
Yeah, I think that's it's key to kind of strike a balance and stuff. So I know we've kind of gotten a little bit off topic, but let's reel ourselves back into where we started. So Blonde Radio in the future, right? Let's say in the next 6 months, okay? Where do you see Blonde Radio?
Yeah, if I can still make rent, it'll still be happening. 6 months from now is so crazy. I actually just got off a call a couple of weeks ago with a sort of, I'd say, maybe local podcast network that I pitched to. They gave me some feedback, and they kind of took me seriously. So that always great to hear. But, you know, there was a lot of stipulations kind of in the suggested contracting that made me think, is that worth pursuing, as far as like, is the future of this linking up with a network, or is this trying to stay as independent as possible? I think in an ideal world, it would stay as independent as possible. But, you know, at the end of the day, independence isn't going to pay the bills. But so the financial question of it is much in the air, and is something I think about a lot and then try not to think about, and it's currently manageable. So 6 months from now, if I could pay rent with this, I'd be so happy. I'm not trying to get a nice car. I'm not trying to, you know what, maybe I'm trying to get a new computer just to edit on. You know, it's not, the things that I need and want in life are to create. They, you know, ask any of my personal friends. I'm not sort of into, like, I haven't bought a new shirt in months. Like, so 6 months from now, I hope this is still happening. I hope we're still creating and reaching as many people as possible. And I hope the intention hasn't changed. I really hope, like, it hasn't gone past this mindset that I feel like I'm currently maintaining right now. I'm trying to keep myself accountable and just like remember where this started and why this started. So onwards and upwards, fingers crossed, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can't tell what's going to happen. There's other options in terms of financing. There's like sponsors and stuff. There's you know, TikTok's finally made the decision to start paying creators.
Yeah.
The ones they're paying just now are the ones that are already millionaires, but that's you know, that's not the point. The point is eventually, you know, they could, yeah, but it's difficult in your situation. I'm lucky. I'm still a student. I'm still in school, high school, so not like university or anything or college. I don't pay for where I live, and that's helpful, because I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. Because this is purely a passion project. It's something that I really enjoy doing, and it allows me to talk to and meet interesting people. Is it financially viable? No, but it's, you know, it'll be fun while it lasts. And I think the key,
that's so important.
Yeah, and that's you know, that's one of the primary motivating factors for me, is it's really fun to do. It's really fun. And then I finally, you know, I've managed to set up like an actual camera, an actual microphone, rather than using like a $30 webcam that I got for online school.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, I'm looking forward to what the future of my podcast holds, and I cannot wait to see what the future of yours holds.
Thank you.
And that finishes off nicely. That's just about the end of the episode. I want to thank you all very much for watching. If you're on Spotify, please head over to YouTube. You'll find links to Blonde Radio and the rest of Brad's social media in the description. Brad, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be on the receiving end of an interview for a change.
It's nice. All right, thank you.